over the years, I've come to the conclusion that as Chinese Americans, we owe a debt of gratitude to the African American community who blazed the trails for us, whether it's affirmative action, whether it's set aside or whatever. If it weren't for the African American communities, all minorities would never have a prayer. So, having said that, I always felt that our community should have a natural affinity to look out for each other's interests. Thank you very much.
We'll take some questions, Mr. Walker.
I don't have a question as much as state. We have something in common. I was the first black man to work for the Chronicle. Back in 1960.
Harold Washington? Is that who you are?
That's Charlie Walker.
Oh, Charlie Walker.
Charlie Walker. Yeah. I said, I was the first black man to work for the Chronicle.
Oh, I thought you said the reporter.
We have
Okay,
something
sorry.
in common. And I noticed, I was sitting here listening to you talk. And as you know, I'm in the construction business. And you made a statement that you benefited from the demonstrations and stuff that black people did.
Yes.
And I thought that was interesting to me because as you benefited, so did a lot of other Asian people from the sweat and blood and tears that we shed.
That's correct.
But in San Francisco, today, no Asian contractor hires a black child to work for him. In San Francisco today,
Charlie, that's not true.
when you were talking, I just didn't interrupt you, and I just want to say that I'm all over San Francisco. I have my first time to see, and I'm saying that it's long talked about in the black community about our distant relationship between the Asian community and the black community. So what I'm here today to say to you that something needs to be done about, particularly in the construction business, that they must hire our people because our people are somewhat responsible for some of the benefits that they get. And you can say what you want to say about what I'm saying, but I have my first time to see an Asian contractor hiring a black person. Well, I think what I'm really saying, what I have known is that our plight in this country is somewhat different than yours. Y'all came because you wanted to come. We came as slaves. That's the difference, and that is why our problem is so much unique. My aunt owned a house at 1535 Gary Street, fresh out of Mississippi, and two white men came to the house one evening and said, "We want this house because all we gonna condemn it." Fresh out of Mississippi, she said, "One of the things I don't want is no trouble out of no white folks." She gave them the house. That was the redevelopment agency. But that was the story of how black people were ran out of the Western Addition. So our plight is somewhat different than y'all. And it was interesting to some of the things that you were saying, but I didn't find it parallel with our plight.
Charlie, is very different. Nobody's history in this country, I think, can ever compare to what the African American community has gone through. Maybe I should have included a little bit about the difference. I just give you a very brief story, so to illustrate to you, how different it is. A diplomat from my country came and paid a courtesy visit to Mayor Brown when he was mayor. The Chinese in general, when you greet each other, is, have you eaten yet? That's always, a customary thing. And then once you have sat down, one of the questions they usually ask you, oh, where are you from? Our diplomat asked Mayor Brown that because he was just transferred as an ambassador from Nairobi, from Kenya, and arrived here. So he saw an African-American mayor. So he meant, where did your ancestry came from? I was besides myself, sitting at the same table. I went and kicked that ambassador under the table, because to me, I've been here 40 years. I understand the sensitivity of that question. But for a foreign diplomat, they didn't, because they just assumed you're an African American. So he just landed from Africa, so he was being friendly and said, which part of Africa are you from? But he did not realize that it could be very hurtful when you ask somebody that question. I made a big fuss later on and wrote to the Chinese government and told them that they should train their diplomats better and never to ask an American, official, especially of African American descent, where they're from. Some of them can't tell you where they're from because their ancestors were tied up as slaves and brought to this country by force. So, but you can understand some of the nuances and the sensitivity about it. People like us, we do understand. Charlie, and it's not true. You can ask Mayor Brown, I can name you 5 companies right off the bat where when we helped them got a contract, their subcontractors were African American firms. So I don't want to, I can't speak for all of the contractors. I hardly, know all of them around the city, but I know a few. And the few that ever worked at the city did hire African American subcontractors, because Ed Lee made sure that they did when he was doing the bids, that was one of the reasons. Can we do more? Hell yes. There's a lot more everybody can do. And have some of our people fail? Hell yes. And have some of the subcontracting fail? Yes, also. So, you can only try, and it is happening.
Ms. Pack, thank you for your leadership on the subject of affordable housing in San Francisco. Certainly, big developers do need to be reined in. My question is that, hearing your comments, I found it hard to square your activism with your support. I found it hard to square your activism on this issue with your support for Willie Brown, in the sense that when the history books are written, I don't think it will be controversial to say that he is one of the most pro-development mayors that the city has known. And to your comments about, a Fortune 500 company helping local interests and whether those two are compatible, our current mayor obviously gave a $6 billion tax break to move into an area that was once Gavin Newsom's former campaign headquarters. So, if you could elaborate on how you sort of square that circle. I'd be very interested to hear those comments.
How do you mean? Willie Brown has built more affordable housing in his tenure as mayor than a lot of mayors combined. And Mayor Lee just started, and he's bringing unemployment numbers down. And to an area that about a half a dozen mayors for the last 50 years have tried to improve mid-market area and haven't been able to. And Furniture Mart sitting there empty for the last 20 years certainly is not very conducive to hiring unemployed people from the area and the neighborhood of Tenderloin and mid-market areas.
One of the things that a lot of us have a problem with is finding differences with each other and then not trying to learn from each other because we're focusing on the differences. Certainly there's some difference in our history and in your history. But at the same time, what you brought forth when you talked about how you all build a community first and outside of that community, then find your leadership, I think really bodes well for how your community has been built and some of the things that we could take advantage of in our community and haven't done as well a job as we probably should. Many times on our side, we find the tail wagging the dog rather than the dog wagging the tail. And I say that because, again, we need to do some of the same things, and that is hold ourselves individually and our community and each other accountable to certain things. We have to feel that we can say and look at each other eye to eye, man to man, woman to woman, person to person, and hold each other accountable for what you are truly saying you're about for this community.